Hello. It is good to be here. My name is Nick, and if you're watching this, you have been walking on eggshells with your spouse probably for some time. And we all know what that feels like. The tension is just palpable. You give each other the silent treatment, like little dirty looks. You sort of maybe avoid eye contact. It's awful. It happens to so many people that the air is just thick with tension and it feels so bad. So today I'm going to help you by giving you what you need to cut through that tension, connect with your spouse, and be able to actually walk through some of the conflicts that might come up that create that tension. So I hope you're ready. I hope you are. Uh, it'd be good to have a piece of notebook, pad, paper. Get a piece of paper and a pen and take some notes because we are going to be really practical today and you will want something to remember this with. So, the most important way to cut through that tension and to stop walking on eggshells around each other is to be able to have the conflict that you want to have. Now, that becomes difficult very quickly because people hate conflict. Conflict feels very scary. So, what we need is the tool that can help us get on the same page and care for each other as we talk about something, which even might be really hard. So, a tool called active listening will get you there. It's a very simple structure with rules for each person that I will tell you the rules today. You can take this and do it right now. So I hope you are ready. So let's dive in. Okay, the goal of active listening is to understand what the other person is saying, to help you get out of your own way so that you don't get defensive, so that you don't take things personally, and so that you can focus, both parties can focus on what one person is saying at a time. And it helps you slow the conversation down so that you can maintain a posture of partnership and grace and love with each other. Okay, so one person is going to be the speaker, one person is going to be the listener, and there are a couple of rules for each role. For the speaker, number one rule, talk about yourself. You want to talk about yourself with honesty and with love for the other person. Don't fall into accusing the other person or blaming the other person. Talk about you and your experience. I usually tell people to focus on two categories: external details, the stuff that's happening outside of you, and internal details, the stuff that is the way that the external details are making you feel, are affecting your fears or your desires. Here's an example. Here's a bad example of what not to do on this talk for yourself rule. Bad example number one. You never listen to me. This is unhelpful for a couple different reasons. One, because it attacks the other person rather than talking about you and your experience. Secondly, though, it's unhelpful because it's too vague and it's too absolute to be helpful. You're like vague and absolute. What does that mean? Um, It's like pointing to a forest and saying, cut down that tree. What tree are you talking about? Nobody knows. It's too vague, and yet you mean a specific tree. It's not helpful. Here's a good example. When you're on the phone while I'm talking to you, it makes me feel like you don't care about me and what I say. That is a good example of speaking for yourself about the external detail and the way that it affects you, the internal detail. Okay, second rule for the speaker. Do not assign motive. In assuming that you know what the person thinks and feels, you are breaking down communication with the other person. All of a sudden, they are going to be on the defensive because ultimately, you haven't let them say it. So here's a bad example of assigning motive. I'm the one who does all the dishes because you think I'm your servant. You are mind reading the other person. You're telling them what they think. That's fundamentally problematic because only they can tell you what you think. You are assuming that you are just right without asking them for any kind of partnership. Here's a good example. Honey, I feel overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that there is to do in the house, and I would really appreciate your help. Third rule for the speaker, no character assassination. Character assassination is when you call names or tear each other down. Here's a bad example of character assassination. You're such a slob. Clean up after yourself. You called them a name. You're stating things about them that are negative. You're saying you are a bad person. You don't want to do that. Obviously, it's going to put the other person on the defense. It doesn't promote partnership. Here's a good example. When you leave your makeup on the sink, I feel really annoyed because it makes it harder for me to get ready, and it makes it feel like you're not considering what I need in the morning. I don't feel thought of and I don't feel cared for. You're talking about yourself with specificity. Okay, last two rules for the speaker. Be brief. I usually tell people get out one thought at a time and share the floor. The other person has stuff that they want to say, so let them say it. Even if you have not been able to say everything that is on your mind to say, you need to let the other person speak. It's a way to sacrifice and to love them. And of course, love involves a lot of sacrifice. So you letting them say what's on their mind, even before you've said everything that it felt like you needed to say, is a way to sacrifice for them, and it will be really appreciated. Rules for the listener. This is kind of the whole main point. This rule right here is kind of almost the hardest part, but it's the most important part. The listener is going to take what the speaker says, paraphrase it, and say it back to them. Now, sub rule, okay, like 1A, you are paraphrasing, not parroting. This shows that you have indeed understood what the speaker is saying and not just like heard the sounds that they were making. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that you understand what the other person is saying. So here's an example of a good paraphrase from the first good example that I said. So an example of a good paraphrase, and I'll say the good example again. Good example number 1. When you're on the phone, when I'm telling you something, it makes me feel like you don't care about what I say, and actually it makes me feel like you don't care about me. So a good paraphrase would be something like, so what I hear you saying is when it seems like I'm not giving you my full attention, it it makes you feel it makes you feel like I don't care about it makes you feel like I don't care about you. That's a good paraphrase. Helping both of you really get on the same page so that everyone knows that you understand. That's the key of the entire exercise. It will cut through all of the tension and help you and your spouse connect, maybe in ways that you've never done before. Okay, more rules for the listener. No rebuttals. Rebuttals include denying that they should feel that way or that they do feel that way, nitpicking details, defending your intentions, or really in any other way, making what the other person said about you and your experience instead of about them and their experience. You do not want to take anything that they said and take it personally or make it about you. Let it be about them. Connect with what they're saying. Empathize with what they're saying, even if you don't really agree with it. From their perspective, this is their perspective that they're sharing. Connect with it, even if you don't really agree. One way that you can do that, one thing that's been helpful for me is if I felt that way, what would that be like? Okay, the other person shares something with you that you just don't, why would they feel that way at all? It just seems so silly to you. Well, if you did feel that way, what would that feel like? That helps you connect with what they're saying. So that's active listening. It is the quickest, easiest way to cut through all of that tension that has had you guys walking on eggshells around each other. Now, I will say it takes practice. So you need to get in the reps. Usually, what I have people do is take these rules, take the structure, and use simple prompts like, what was the best part of your day? Or what was the worst part of your day? And why? And practice the speaker listener technique so that when emotions are high and you really need to slow things down, you're not kind of figuring it out as you go. Now, one huge obstacle to the speaker listener technique is defensiveness. Like I said, taking it personally, uh, calling the other person wrong or silly, any kind of way that you would be defensive against the other person or closed off to them, it will break down the entire structure. So guard your heart against being closed off to what the other person is saying and really to the other person. So is the rules for active listening. It has changed my marriage. It has changed a lot of marriages before mine. It is the best communication tool to cut through all of whatever might be coming between you and your spouse. So I hope you found this helpful. Take that structure, start practicing it today. And I think you will find that it's really helpful. So thanks so much. And we will talk to you again later.